Hey, hi. Good morning, everybody. This is John Bonsignor, Talking Politics. My co-host today, Randall Wallace, and we're going to be talking about his book. Paul Gable, unfortunately, is not here. He has the virus, not the coronavirus, but just plain virus. So Paul is not here, and we have Randall with his book, Always Vote Your Conscience. We'll be right back after these messages. What a book. Look at that picture. You look so handsome. Now everybody looking at you, you're just as handsome, but you gained a little weight. What do you have to say about that? That book, what made you write the book? You have here lessons learned from a lifetime in politics. So all your life you've been in politics? Is that what you're saying?
Well, basically,
even when you were in school?
Yeah.
Even when you were a baby? You're in politics, a lifetime in politics.
I've been involved with it since I was 9 years old.
Wow.
So
wow.
I can't say that I did a whole lot when I was 9, but
what got you interested in politics?
Well, I tell a story in the book that my mother was an English teacher for years, but when she did her student teaching in 1960. One of the assignments that the kids had in the class that she was in was to keep a scrapbook of the 1960 presidential election between Vice President Richard Nixon, and Senator John F. Kennedy. And one of the kids left that book in the classroom, and she took it home, and it stayed in our house for 20 years. And so, so amazingly, when I was a little kid, I just got into it, and I still have the book at my house. And I decided I'd keep one from the 1980 election, which I still have that one too. And I kept all the news articles in 1980 when Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan were running. And I made a little homemade sign for Ted Kennedy of all people. And if you know where the St. John's Inn on 67th Avenue is, they had a big sign with a two-headed horse on it. And I would go down on the end of the street and hold this sign up for Ted Kennedy for president. Underneath that sign and I did that for who knows how long. And then when Kennedy was eliminated, I took that same sign and flipped it over on poster board and did one for Ronald Reagan. And I always tell people that makes me the only person in America that supported Ronald Reagan.
Were you disappointed with the Chappaquiddick with Ted Kennedy? Were you disappointed at 9 years old that
I didn't know any of that.
That he let Joanne Kopechne drown?
I didn't know any of that at 9.
Well, I mean, you're into politics at that age. You're holding up signs, Ted Kennedy, vote for Ted Kennedy. Yeah, right.
So then I had one. I made the same one for Ronald Reagan.
Was there any?
And here's what happened. Al Terrell.
Come on, give us the facts, will you?
Well, then Al Terrell stopped off.
Running around the bush.
Well, this is how I got started. It was Al Terrell then. You remember Al?
Of course, he's the Republican leader, and Kennedy's a Democrat. So you switched over then?
When Kennedy was eliminated, I was a Ronald Reagan guy,
why were you for Kennedy if you were a Ronald Reagan guy?
I was 9, John. It was not a lot of thought put in this.
Well, you're a lifetime in politics. At that time, you should have been a politician.
Well, that's true, but
you had this big sign up, Kennedy.
And when Kennedy was,
you didn't want Kennedy, just like a politician, you wanted the other guy.
So then I was for Ronald Reagan, and that's when Al Terrell got me involved in the party, and after that I've been a Republican ever since, and that was how I got involved.
Well, all books have a little bit of scandal in it, like somebody did something that's a known politician. Is there anything like that in here? Is there anything here about John Jenneret, and his escapades in Washington? Is there anything in here about that?
John's in there. Congressman Jenneret is in there. He and I.
How do you write about him?
Well, I tell you, I used.
Come on, Randall.
Let's
have it. The people want to buy the book. Is there anything salacious in here that they can really buy? What is it? Come on, tell us.
There's a story about how John Jenneret had a real feel for the people. That John Napier talks about listening to people, and about how he had a debate that they had. That John Napier,
but he got tied up with ab scam at the time, didn't he?
He did. He was involved in ab scam.
So how did that come about? Is it in here?
No, I didn't talk about ab scam. Though I will tell you, I do have a great memory of Phil Donahue having John Jenrette on. And
is it in here?
No, it's not. But Phil Donahue
but what's in here that's really something you want to report? That people, they love gossip. People love gossip, and that's what sells books, gossip, even though sometimes gossip, like John Bolton's book, is not accurate. They just come up with scenarios and are not accurate or true, although he has not written it down, but people are talking about it. Can we talk about the same thing here?
No, there's not a lot of salacious gossip. What this book is
well,
really,
tell us about it. Go ahead.
It's a
book about your lifetime.
Well, it's also a book though about. I originally, I ran for Congress in 2012.
I know.
And lost. And at the time, I was very concerned about the direction the country was going, and I'm still very concerned about the direction the country is going. I think we've got a crisis of spirit, even though the economy is doing a lot better. The divisiveness and the mean-spiritedness that has permeated politics over the past 25 years, I guess, probably, but maybe not quite that long, but probably since the Clinton impeachment or the 1996 election. And that was something that was very different than what I grew up with as a kid from 9 to 25. And when I worked on Bob Dole's presidential campaign, those guys, they got out there and they fought it out, but there was a lot of Bob Dole came over and helped Bill Clinton with dealing with Serbia and Bosnia when all that was going on. They were still willing to put the country first to resolve problems. And one of the things I think that's happened now is that it's gotten to the point that they don't talk to each other, they don't work together, and you can see it with Donald Trump being impeached.
But politicians like to pat themselves on the back, and they can tell you how wonderful they are and what wonderful things they did. In the meantime, there's a lot of scandals going on that nobody knows about. So oftentimes when someone writes a book, they bring up those scandals. And this is what happened at that period in time. Like today, now Obama is saying that the economy is doing so well because of his administration, and it was doing well when he left office. But they forget to say that we didn't go over 2% of the GDP during Obama's administration. And then at that point in time when he left, most of the economists said we were getting ready for another recession. So these things are interesting to bring up because people always pat themselves on the back. But here you're writing a book and you're telling us that you've been in politics in a lifetime. So during your lifetime, many interesting anecdotes
and I think
many interesting stories are in this book. Is that right?
There are interesting stories, I think.
Can you tell us about them?
Well, I try to do it in a way that was more positive. There's nothing in there that's negative or scandal prone or any of that kind of thing. It is examples that people set that I saw. There's a chapter in there about James Frazier, who was a county councilman.
But everything is positive. Is there anything negative in here?
Yeah, there's.
Well, tell us about it. Or you want them to buy the book, and you say, read the book, and you find out what I have to say. Or is that it?
I do it.
All right, hold that thought. I just got the signal. We have to go for a break. So here's where we make our money, through these sponsors.
Warning signs. Throughout our lives, we learn their importance and what they mean. Flashing lights alert you of construction on the highway. A loud siren lets you know about a fire drill in your office. Cell phones can even inform you when bad weather is headed your way. However, a lot of people aren't familiar with the warning signs for the fourth leading cause of death in the United States: stroke. A stroke can happen in a moment's notice, so it's important to detect the warning signs. If you spot facial drooping, sudden arm weakening, or trouble speaking, like slurred speech, then it's time to call 911. These signs can come on suddenly, so get help immediately if you identify any of these signs in yourself or someone around you. The longer a stroke goes unnoticed, the more damage is done. That's why it is important to act fast. To learn more signs and symptoms of stroke, go to the American Heart Association at strokeassociation.org.
John Bonsignor. Today we have Randall Wallace as our guest. Paul Gable is sick at home with the virus. I hope he gets better. He'll be here next week. But anyway, going on with the subject of always vote your conscience and lessons learned from a lifetime in politics, the one, the only, Randall Grant Wallace. But he just says Randall Wallace. Here's the book. Randall wrote it. How long did it take you to write this book, Randall?
It kind of depends on how you look at it. But
well, tell us how long. That's all. Well, what do you mean look at it like what?
Well, it took 7 years. I started it in 2012.
7 years.
But I did not work as diligently on it until after 2017. That's when I really worked on getting it together. And there are sections in it that are older. It originally started out as the research work that I had done when I ran for Congress, and there's a section that's all on on policy positions, and then I worked on my assessments of what has kind of gone wrong in politics over the past
You go from the Nixon period on. How did you do that? You had Nixon, who you adored. Then you had also Clinton, who also was in the same predicament as Nixon, and so you're more or less a historian in politics because that's your lifetime. What lessons learned from both of those two tragic incidents where they were trying to be impeached that you took away from that you have in your book?
I do have it in a
I know you love Nixon, so it must be in here somewhere.
Well, it's twofold. The Nixon thing, Richard Nixon's in there a lot because I've got a big proposal that I take from his time, which is the new federalism, which was replacing welfare with the family assistance plan, restructuring the government, and revenue sharing. But I also make a point throughout about President Nixon, and is this, that even despite the fact that he was a president that could be very polarizing, and that there was obviously a division between he and the Democratic Party that led to his almost impeachment and his resignation, they still got things done when he was president.
Well, he was undercut by Barry Goldwater. When Barry Goldwater came out and said, "Look, you got to resign," he did the best thing and just walked away, and he got Gerald Ford involved. And Gerald Ford came up with that. At that time, we were having a big problem with respect to the economy, and he had that WIN program, how to stimulate the economy again. But is all of that in the book? You discuss that here?
I really discussed a policy proposal of President Nixon's and the way that he went about coming up with policy, because he was a firm believer. He didn't play contrary to what you may think, he didn't play a lot of games with political things. He went and said, okay, here's a problem. We got to figure out how to address that problem. And one of the things I talk about is the war on drugs. Okay. and the methadone program.
We're still going on to that.
And a lot of the changes that have been made that are bad were not his.
He appropriated $1 billion to fight cancer.
He did.
And he was really someone that was very determined. And I think if he carried out his term, we would have made better strides with respect to cancer.
Oh yeah,
and also drugs. But we didn't give Richard Nixon that chance to complete his term, and it was a shame because he opened up the door to China with Kissinger making that secret trip to meet with Mao, and he had other very positive programs that would have uplifted the economy. And once Nixon left, the economy went all the way down, and that's why we had win inflation now, that win pin that Jerry Ford came out with, because we were going down and the country was really feeling the effects of Nixon leaving.
Oh yeah, and he foresaw welfare reform issues by 40 years, healthcare reform issues by 40 years. He was ahead of the game on cancer, and that money is really, cancer is not a death sentence today because of the work that President Nixon did.
But he also he was opening the doors for discrimination, racial discrimination. He was a pioneer of that. He felt that everybody should be treated equally, and that nobody should be left out.
Oh, he did.
And that was his program.
He desegregated the schools. He the American Indians. He did the Self Realization Act. I'm trying to think of what that actually was titled, but with self-determination.
He gave the tribes more of a positive spin. He gave them money. He was working with his Commerce Department very strongly with respect to that, and the Interior, which is under the Indian. The Department of Interior covers the tribes and so forth. And at that time, he was interested in uplifting them because they had all type of problems, health problems, economic problems in the various tribal areas, especially those in Montana and in North Dakota. So Nixon was trying to do all of that. But look, that's my story. It's not your story. And we were really interested in your story because this is a fascinating book that took Randall 7 years to write. Wow, 7 years.
7 years. And I have a pretty big comprehensive plan that's in there that has to do with some proposals that Nixon had. That he had started revenue sharing, which is community development block grants exists now, where he had gotten started with a couple of things, but he also wanted to restructure the government. And what I basically say that you can address a lot of the problems that we have now by combining the program that I embraced when I was running for Congress called it was by a group called Strong America Now, which was Lean Six Sigma. It was a waste reduction program where you would go through every federal government and cut waste that wasn't cutting the program's end goal. It was actually just going through and finding waste that doesn't feed the taxpayers.
What about your programs when you were a councilman? You were on the council here in the city of Myrtle Beach for how many years?
16.
16 years. So what did you do in those 16 years that's in this book on the city council of Myrtle Beach? Well, what programs did you initiate? What were put into action? Or what ordinances that you were responsible for that uplifted the city? You hear Tim Wilkes complaining all of the time now that this building next door to us here is a factory building that he wanted to put a church in, and they wouldn't give him the church. I mean, this is something that is unheard of. But however, you're a councilman. You met those issues, and how did you take care of them? How did you get the legislation passed that you were interested in?
Well, you got to always be able to count to 4 when you're on city council. I mean,
okay, so remember that. Count 4.
You got to have 4 votes for anything you want to do.
Okay.
The book itself does talk about the genesis of the tourism development fee and the benefits that it has had to the city. I do talk about a desire to foster entrepreneurship and to get government out of the way of so that your entrepreneurs, your business people in town can thrive. I worked on that the entire time I was on council. Whether or not I was successful, a lot of times you have bureaucrats, you have other council members who maybe don't believe that you should be unhindered. That put up obstacles to some entrepreneurial endeavors.
What is in this book that you met such opposition that's in this book, and how you was able to turn that opposition around to a positive?
Well, the tourism development fee is one where we talk about how it got started, and that you will have people who will be opposed to a lot of the ideas.
But government should have a back seat, you just told us a few seconds ago.
Well, I mean, yes, there's a section here where we talk about, you're talking about local government, about fostering entrepreneurship.
Well, you as a councilman, how did you
the book's a policy
meet these
book,
issues head on and then turn them around into a positive?
The book is a policy book about things that looking forward. I don't do a lot of talking about what I did do or what went on in the city. Because, I mean, there's examples of local government.
Politics.
Yeah, I understand.
Lifetime of politics, you don't want to promote yourself?
Well,
you're the only politician I met that doesn't want to promote himself.
Well, I mean, it's about...
You did something good for the city.
Yeah.
Well, what were they? Is it in the book?
Well, yeah, they're in there. I mean...
Don't stutter. Is it in the book?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of policy proposals that come from my time in local government that are in the book.
But you got to remember, the people are looking at this show right now, and they're looking at this book. They want to buy the book. Tell us how they can get it. If I was I'm promoting your book.
Yes,
that you should be doing. This book costs $20. How much did it cost you to put your sweat, tears, and money into this book that you put out, that you want the people to read? Because you say always vote your conscience. In what sense? Go ahead.
The advice I got from James Frazier about
James Fraser.
James Fraser
Who
was
was
a county
James
councilman.
Fraser?
James Fraser was a county councilman in Horry County for 38 years or 36 years, I think.
Whatever.
And he was the longest serving councilman in the history of Horry County. And I went to take a tour of the county building, and he gave me some advice.
Randall, we only have about 4 minutes left.
Anyway,
how do the people get your book?
Well, the advice he
where
gave
do
was,
they get? Where did they send their checks? Where is it? Where is it located? How can they get it? Give us all.
Well, John, you asked me what how the title came about.
Yeah, but
the
all right,
advice he
forget
gave
about
was,
the title. We
always vote your conscience.
We want to sell the book.
I understand. Always vote your conscience. Don't take it personally, and don't fight the same old battles over and over again.
Yeah, I see.
One of the problems that's going on in government today is that people aren't following that advice. They've got secret agendas. They take stuff personal. They fight battles over and over and over again, and it's got.
But that's why they want to buy your book.
And this book is a policy book that tries to correct that, and you can get it on Amazon.
But you see the producer there? He's telling me, "Cut it, John. Cut it. We have a commercial." Okay, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Don't go away. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Right back.
American libraries have more books than any other countries on earth. But the US has 5th lowest literacy rate in the developed world. 2 out of 3 haven't read a book in over a year. You can travel all around the world when you step into the library. Expand your horizon, navigate your life. Unplug, unwind, read.
Hey man, I'm on my way to the finest place for everyone to play, where the drinks are cool if the sun is hot, and the Merle's Inlet's Marsh Walk.
Enjoy spectacular waterfront dining and live music with breathtaking saltwater marsh views at the Merle's Inlet Marsh Walk. Marsh Walk, where the view, the music, and the fun are always free. Marsh Walk, Highway 17 Business, Waterfront, Merle's Inlet.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a server at Brothers Grill, and as a server here, I like to make sure everybody has amazing service and good fresh food every single day. We serve lunch and dinner from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., our happy hours from 4 to 7, and we're located on 5900 North Kings Highway. Follow us on Facebook at Brothers Grill Myrtle Beach.
We're back. John Bonsignor, after being scolded by my producer that I interrupted Randall and I don't let him finish the sentence, I didn't know I was doing that. But however, my producer, who's right behind the camera, saying, "John, give Randall a chance, will you? The show is about Randall, not about you." Okay, Randall, go ahead.
Well, it's just the book is a policy book, and it's an attempt to address the real division going on, around the country, drawing on my experiences in local government, and there are stories about examples from local government that I think could be used. But there is a proposal from some of the books that I have read that we try to do. One of them is that I think Congress needs to go to a 5-day work week, so that they have to live there and work together and get to know each other. And that the leadership in this country needs to make a conscious decision to change all this mean-spirited fighting that they've been doing, and then put these people together so that they start to figure out ways to address problems. That's the difference between Congress prior to 1994 and today. Is today they fly in half a day on a Tuesday, they work all day Wednesday and deal with constituents all day, and half a day Thursday, and then they're back to the district. Whereas they used to live there, work there, play together, work together. Bob Dole and Dan Inouye were good friends. Ted Stevens and Dan Inouye were good friends. And I do some examples of the relationships that in the history of senators. I profile Strom Thurmond and Joe Biden, who's running for president today. They were really good friends. In fact, Biden came and gave Strom Thurmond's eulogy. Dan Inouye and Bob Dole, who met in an Army hospital after World War II, who both made it to the United States Senate and worked together on issues. Ted Stevens and Dan Inouye, who also worked together as close as you could be as good personal friends.
He's a senator from Hawaii.
Dan Inouye was a senator from Hawaii, and Ted Stevens was a senator from Alaska. And the reason that relationship is worth profiling is they're the last senators who couldn't get home. And they had to stay in D.C., so they got to be friends. And they got where they worked together on the Appropriations Committee to look after each other's state, one a Republican, one a Democrat. And you can see when people have these relationships, that they make government work better. One of the cases in here I profiled is the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, and a friendship that saved that entire debate from being a bigger disaster than it already was. And that was Chris Coons of Delaware and Jeff Flake from Arizona. And I do a comparison and contrast of how our leadership has diminished in the years that I've been involved by looking at Bob Packwood's case, who was a United States Senator from Oregon who got in some trouble for sexual harassment. Bill Clinton's case.
That was when he was tongue kissing a girl, an intern.
But the senators looked at that and figured out a way to keep it from being a complete disaster. And they did it again when Bill Clinton was president, even though it had been very divisive in one house. And you can see the deterioration of leadership there. And then you look at what happened with Kavanaugh.
But he worked well with the Newt Gingrich Clinton.
They did.
They turned the economy around. But then Reagan with Skip O'Neill.
Yeah, and I profile Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, and I profile Lyndon Johnson and Everett Dirksen, because you have leaders who work together to get things done. None of the civil rights acts that were passed in the 60s would have ever happened if Lyndon Johnson and Everett Dirksen had not had as good a relationship as the two of them had. And that's my point. I mean, do you feel like Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump have any kind of relationship at all? No, they haven't even spoken in months.
They hate one another.
And that's what's changed. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill couldn't get along to save their soul as far as their politics, but they were friends and they worked together to get things done.
Maybe that's why we are having this tough time, because the Congress doesn't get along with the president. Would you say that they should now turn the page and try to get along?
That's why I think they need to get together and have like I said, the first point in that portion of the book is make a conscious decision to change. And then Trent Lott and Tom Daschle had this proposal of going to a 5-day work week for Congress. And I think that's another step they need to do. And I think then you'll start to see them start to work together better. Because they'll get to know each other. And when you don't know each other, that's how these kind of things happen. And then I had some proposals of a big plan for them to work on, one of which being the Lean Six Sigma waste reduction program that I picked up when I ran for Congress.
Did you hear those bells?
I did.
That means we only have a minute left.
And then the Simpson-Bowles proposals for budget cutting as a blueprint. Granted, it's pretty old, and there's some tough love in that for getting the government back. We've got to address this deficit problem that we've got in the national debt problem. And then I proposed, going back and looking at this Nixon's new federalism that he had proposed, which included revenue sharing for addressing infrastructure is what I would do it for now. And then the family assistance plan, which would wipe out the overhead of welfare and get it away from being this controlling governmental program for the poor, but actually giving people some dignity by giving them a check. And Andrew Yang, who was a Democrat who was running, has a universal income proposal. His is for everybody and across the board. I don't like that idea, but I do like the idea.
$1,000 for every citizen. But
I do like the idea of welfare being replaced.
Well, now you got Bloomberg in the race, and he's going to spend at least $1 billion on the race. But anyway, let's talk about this book. And how can people?
And then the final proposal was Nixon's restructuring of the government, which was an infrastructure department, human resources, natural resources, community development, economic development, and changing the way the government cabinets are working now, leaving the Department of State and Treasury and Defense alone. But one of the things that happened after the 9/11 was we had all these people in different intelligence organizations spread out across the government. They weren't talking to each other. And that led to what happened in 9/11. And what I'm proposing is an infrastructure department where they do everything in one spot and you be more oriented.
What I'm smiling about is tell us about the book, how they can get the book.
This is what's in it. But
I mean, I'm going to ask Jay, we're going to wrap up now.
Amazon.com is where you can get the book. It's under that name. The one thing I will tell you, though, is that there's a famous movie producer with my same name. And unfortunately, Amazon will steer you there, but it's with one L. Brad Waltz with one L.
We're saying goodbye now.